What is up, everyone? Welcome back to Vended Thoughts. I'm your host, Dominick Barbato. Today, we have a very special guest here on this podcast. Dean Pagano, super awesome, young, talented entrepreneur. I actually had the brief hot minute of being his mentor in college for a short period of time. We're going to talk about a bunch of stuff, but Dean, introduce yourself, tell them where you're from, and give them a little background on yourself.
Dom, thank you so much for having me on the podcast, man. This is such a great opportunity. Anytime I'm able to catch up with you and provide some value to the audience here. So thank you seriously for having me. So my name's Dean Pagano. I'm from Long Island, New York. 21-year-old entrepreneur. I have a digital marketing agency. I've bounced around a couple of different industries. I've been in business for a long time now, I think, as a young guy. I started my first business when I was 17 years old in my junior year of high school. And from that point on, I knew that entrepreneurship was the route for me. I started a clothing company, brought me into college as the entrepreneur of the freshman class. And right away, Dom, being a few years older than me, took me under his wing. And like you said in the intro, you were my mentor for a little bit. I still consider you a mentor, even though we're both, busy with our own schedules. But anytime we get in touch and talk, there's always great conversation and new ideas being tossed around. And I'm thankful for that.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And then, long story short, we'll get into it, but I bounced around different industries. I relocated to Florida for a little over a year, learned a lot about digital marketing there. And then when I came back to finish up school, that's when I launched my own agency. But we'll get into that later on.
Yeah, absolutely. Can't wait to talk about your agency. And what was the name of your agency? True Lead Generation?
Correct. True Lead Generation.
Very cool.
You could just call it True for short.
All right, True.
That's right.
Yeah, met you in college, mentored you for a bit. Cool that you still consider me that. And
Definitely.
I have a question coming up on that later, kind of like a brief thing that you asked me a couple years ago, and it stuck with me through the years because I never really had an answer at that point. Because even at that point, man, I was still growing up, and from that point on, obviously, both of us are growing up in the same amount of time. We were both in college. Whether I was mentoring you or not, I still had things to learn for myself.
Mm-hmm.
So the clothing brand, which I think I had 2 shirts from. The one t-shirt, man, I absolutely still love it. Still in mint condition, never shrunk, best quality ever. I know you're not doing it anymore, but just talk a little bit about that, I guess. And yeah,
that was Mountaintop. The name of the clothing company is such a special part of me, who I am. Essentially, a lot of people who know me know, but to those of you listening, I come from an artistic family. So I was given, genetically, I'm fortunate enough to have a very creative side to me when it comes to visual arts, drawing, painting, things like that. So throughout most of middle school, I was drifting towards, around that time when it's less like you need to take these classes and more, you go to your guidance counselor, and when you set your schedule, you can start to pick and choose what you want to do and start to, just test the waters, find new interests, etc. I started taking a lot of art classes. So it was typically like, my core classes and then art. It was like science, history, drawing and painting, things like that. And that was my schedule for basically most of middle school, all of middle school. I actually won like class artist in middle school. So it was kind of a given that I would go into something in the arts. And then come high school, it's not so much that I lost the passion for it, but I realized that, unfortunately, as much as I loved it, it's not something that I wanted to pursue as a career. And so I was fortunate enough to be able to have met some people that were upperclassmen in high school that were very heavily involved in business. And although it's kind of a complete 180 from art, in my opinion, I decided to test out one class in high school called business law. And that was basically my only business class. And then that was, sandwiched in between a drawing class business law and then a painting class. So I was still very heavily involved in art, but I decided to give this one a shot. And so I had a teacher in my junior year of high school here in business law that profoundly changed my life. She taught me that entrepreneurship was basically the art of business. And what, to me, in my head, that was basically like saying you can be as creative as possible to find solutions to real problems. You can market it as creative as possible, brand it as creative as possible, except unlike, unfortunately, most occupations in art, it's a lot more lucrative. And so right off the bat, entrepreneurship, this pretty new idea, this new concept to me, was seemed like a great opportunity. And so my next questions for her when I would stop by for office hours or see her on my lunch break was, how do I get started? And she said one of the key I guess traits of a successful entrepreneur would be taking initiative. And so she said the answer to all of your questions in entrepreneurship is going to be just do it, basically. Like Nike says, like, just do it. There's like, if you don't know how to do something, do it. And if you mess up, then you just need to fix it and try again and try again and try again. And so I said to myself, you know what, like, I know I'm a young guy, but what the hell, let me just go ahead and start a clothing company. And it was literally, YouTube video after YouTube video, podcasts, following different people on Instagram, watching different tutorials. You know the drill, Dom. I'm sure you've been there before.
Yeah, absolutely.
And just self-education mixed with that hunger and that drive to start something. And I figured clothing would be a great place to start, just because I think looking back on it, I was in apparel for 3 years. It's a very difficult industry, but for me, my junior year, my 17-year-old brain basically said, oh, buy a bunch of t-shirts, print a logo on them, stuff them in a box in my trunk, and then sell them, during study hall. What's easier than that? And so that was the attraction for me. And I dove into it head first. And, to this day, I still thank my younger self for trying it, because it's been a pivotal point, and it's really led me to understand what I want to do at such an early age, and has opened up so many doors for me. I mean, the first door and I'm not just saying this because I'm on your podcast, Dom, the first door I remember entrepreneurship opening up was me getting to college and, hey, like, Dean, who are you? And it's like, oh, I'm Dean. I have a clothing company. Oh, you should meet Dom Barbato. He's an entrepreneur. He just graduated. And then it was like, oh, like, I got to meet this guy, Dom Barbato. And sure enough, we met, and you taught me a lot about entrepreneurship. And, it's just little things like that. Like, without the clothing company, I don't even want to call it leverage, but I was able to leverage that experience, or that, I guess, hobby at the time, because it wasn't very lucrative. It was more of a learning process for me as such a young guy, just to get things off the ground and fail forward. But it opened up so many doors for me, and it really taught me a lot of lessons along the way.
Yeah, honestly, beautiful story in a degree, because there are teachers in college that definitely can impact you in some way. And that's why it's hard to justify sometimes the 30, 40 and upwards of probably $80,000 a year college can be. But there's always that one professor that potentially can change your entire perspective on life. And then secondly, to what you were saying, if you didn't start Mountaintop, you wouldn't be the founder of Truly Generation right now. You wouldn't have went on to start your own podcast, with shameless plug, DeanTV on YouTube. For those still listening, you guys could go check out his podcast. You wouldn't have those things. And even transitioning into our next question before we actually get into pretty much the line of questioning, is the drop surfing guy, which I don't know if people have ever seen his ads. I saw his ads a lot. His name's Jared Goetz.
Jared Getz.
You worked for him for a bit, and even in that position, I know the story with that. You basically like hit him up, told him you'd work for him for free, and then you flew down there and you proved yourself to him, and then he started paying you, and basically stuff like that, which I think is awesome. If you want to touch a little bit about him and how that motivated you to do what you're doing now, I guess.
Yeah, it was with Jared. It was such a perfect scenario in terms of, I mean, timing, content, really everything, to the very, very last detail of him even growing up in Comac, which is 15 minutes, 20 minutes away from me, here on Long Island as well. It was a
I didn't
time
know
in
he
my
was from Long
life.
Island.
Yeah, he's a Long Island guy, Comac guy. And
Very cool. Very cool.
it was crazy because, at the time I saw he was doing his thing in South Florida. So it's like, what are the chances? I mean, I guess South Florida, the chances are pretty high that he's going to be from Long Island, but, it's still, it was just kind of fell into place. It was almost like it was meant to be. But basically what happened with that was, hustling and hustling and hustling with word of mouth. And remember, when I started Mountaintop, this is an art kid that had nothing to do with business, trying to sell. And so really the only thing in business that I had going for me was that I have somewhat of a personality that I didn't know I was doing it at the time, but I was in sales. That's what I was in. I was in, I was trying to sell and hustle, and any free moment that I had, I'd look at the time while I was in high school and I'd say, all right, I've got 40 minutes of study hall. I got to sell 5 shirts, and I'm going to walk around the halls, and I'm going to catch people going to the bathroom, and I'm going to dish them out. They're, stacked up in my backpack, blah, blah, blah. But that was grueling, and I didn't know how to verbalize it. I didn't know how to communicate this to myself. But at the time, I knew deep down inside that this was not, and my favorite word, you've probably heard me say this a million times, Dom, it wasn't sustainable. I could not be a multi-millionaire that was hustling with shirts in my backpack. I knew that there was another way. I knew that there was a reason that you see these guys that are, granted, working hard, but, just pushing their mouse from behind a computer at their desk and making hundreds of thousands of dollars of sales. I knew that it wasn't, t-shirts out of the backpack. That wasn't the way to scale a business. It's a great way to start a business, but that's not how you maintain a business. And so when I started really diving into Jared's content and seeing that he was leveraging this epiphany for me at the time, and I'll never forget when I was first introduced to, did you know that there's actually somebody behind those Facebook ads that you're seeing all the time? And when I saw that and realized, like, hey, there's somebody that's actually profiting off of these freaking ads that are in my Instagram feed every 5 seconds, like why can't I do that for my clothing company? And the answer was, you can do it, but obviously it's going to take some money. And so I knew that if I didn't know what I was doing and I tried it, I was just going to fail miserably. And this time it wouldn't just be like a few $100, oh, you tried to start a clothing company, it didn't work out, move on. It was going to be like, me pouring my savings account into Facebook ads with no idea what I was doing. So I knew right off the bat, having struggled trying to hustle with t-shirts for so many years, that being able to work under Jared, who is an expert at digital ads, the second fastest growing Shopify store of 2017, did $2.5 million in sales just through Facebook ads and retargeting in 1 month. I knew that if I can work for him, it didn't matter what he was paying me. If anything, I just needed to be in the same clique as him. I needed to be on the same team as him. I needed to give him value in some way and stay with him for a long enough period of time where I can learn what this guy is doing myself. And that's basically, that was my whole motive behind, getting in there and adding value to that team, and that team specifically. And it worked out. That was it.
Yeah. No, that's like very cool. And obviously I've heard the story, but for everyone else, you now understand, yeah, there is someone behind the ad. The other thing is sustainability. I have heard you say that, Dean, but it probably was you that put that initiative in me probably a year ago when I was on your podcast. If you guys want to check out my podcast with Dean, that is on DeanTV on YouTube, like I said before. But
yes, sir.
The sustainability thing is huge, because I want to say it was you, or maybe I knew it, but I don't think I answered that question. I remember that question hitting me in a way where it was like, I was unsure of my answer. And sustainability and entrepreneurship is probably one of the biggest things with your business. And it's interesting that that's your favorite word, but your business has to last 20,
Right.
30, 40 years,
Exactly.
even beyond that, you want it to last past, when you die, that's a business lives on. It's a legacy
Exactly.
that you created.
Exactly. And I want to jump in there too, just on that topic before we go into some more questioning too. But the reason that Dom and I say to those of you that are listening, the reason that we talk about sustainability, and this is the concept that sort of was the snap into place, like click in my mind moment for me, was the reason that us entrepreneurs are entrepreneurs is primarily one commonality. And what I found is that um, you can make a lot of money as an employee, you can make a lot of money as an entrepreneur. The difference is what you strive for in your lifestyle. So, entrepreneurs, yeah, we're all about hustle. Like when I say, I'm a firm believer in like you have to earn it. You really have to earn it and work for it. But the difference is that an employee will trade their time for money, and that could be on a smaller scale, like somebody working minimum wage, which is fine. That's totally cool. And if that's your style, if you prefer that sort of, give me some tasks and I'll do it, and then you pay me by the hour or salary, like that's fine. I'm not knocking that. I think that's a great method, a very, very easy to keep track of. But entrepreneurs, the whole idea of sustainability is we want to front load the work. So I'm willing to work for a month and see $0 return to build something, some sort of machine that when I leave it unattended or partially attended, meaning I'll check up on the machine for an hour a week, maybe even less, it's making me money sustainably. I don't want it to just be an e-commerce store that blows up, makes $10,000 that I busted my balls for, and then it just dies out because all of that hard work that I put in where I made $0, the 2 months that it took me to build a store, I might as well have just worked a job that I made $5,000 a month. And now I still have that job and I could continue that forever. I know there's a little bit complex way of explaining it, but it's all about making sure that you're going to build something to last the long term.
Yeah, yeah, and you definitely prove that point 100%. And I think it is something that people should stop and realize, because the e-commerce store thing, and I mentioned on the last podcast with another e-commerce guy, he was making millions of dollars a year back in the 2011 20 to 2015 e-commerce bubble, before Facebook ads started to cost a little bit more money. He was making, for 10 cents on the dollar, he was making $25, and it was a lot cheaper back then. Now you're paying a couple dollars for those leads. But the thing is, sustainability with e-commerce is very hard unless you have an Amazon type of approach in terms of two things: branding or just like dominance of a market.
Mm-hmm.
And two of those things are pretty hard. That's why it's easier to just sell on Amazon instead of your own store. But at the same time, if you have something that's really going to leave an impact, like you were even saying, and a legacy that, or a system that essentially works for you, while you're not attending it, you need to obviously have something that's sustainable. Because
Mm-hmm.
if you're just selling a watch to sell a watch to make money, to make a profit, the value exchange there, it will be known to the person. Because if you list a watch on a website, you're not going to do the caring things that someone who wants to buy that watch would like before purchasing it. It's like a whole brand perspective and
Right.
brand psychology, which is
Exactly.
really cool. And I think that's basically what you do with Truly Generation, is just figuring out the branding for each company and marketing it in a way where it's unique to them and, makes them stand out from the rest of the crowd.
Absolutely. And we focus on the long term, the big picture, all of that. I mean, we're not looking to make quick bucks. We're looking for um, clients that are in it for the long term. Like I said, people that are really becoming partners of us, not just simply clients, people that um, see that
Trusting it.
value in, if we can front load your reviews for the next 6 months, that you'll see a return on your investment 7 months, 8 months down the road, things like that.
That's, yeah, and I love that approach to it, because even that is unique in itself, how you're marketing it, because there's so many digital marketing companies out there that it's just, here's my service, here's my amount. Do you want that service and do you want to pay that? You're kind of making it like, hey, this is us. Be a part of it with us. If we help you in exchange, that will help us in the long term as well, and vice versa. It works better that way. There's a lot of good karma in that, because they're going to tell the next person if you can, do certain things. But the thing about marketing that no one realizes is it does take a longer term, and that is a big thing when you're selling to businesses, is they need to understand that
Mm-hmm.
SEO doesn't just take 3 months; it takes 6 months. If you
Absolutely.
had none,
Mm-hmm.
But That's so awesome to hear, man. And I think a lot of tidbits in there that really just bring it home to just things that I've been noticing in my own life and basically what's going on, because I feel like we all, rush to be 18 years old or to drive, when we're 16, 17, to drive a car. We rush to do these things, but it's in the moments when we're not rushing to the next thing that we learn what we need to do when that next thing hits us in life. And that's
Exactly.
something that I've really been learning. And I think your life, it's cool to see that it kind of all had to play itself out now to this point with digital marketing. Bro, you're positioned in an industry where it'll grow 25%, 50% in the year to come. So like years to come, and it's a good industry to be in. So
Yeah,
I'm
it's very,
excited to see
very,
your
very
progress.
exciting. I appreciate that, Dom.
Yeah, no worries, man. But we're gonna hop into our line of questioning. We do things a little different here. I try to have a little bit of a structure just so people can get to know you a little better.
Of
Um,
course, man. Lay them on me. Let's do it. I'm ready.
Sounds good, man. And thanks for coming on, though. I don't even know if I ever said that, but thank you for
Oh,
being
dude.
on. I appreciate your time.
Thank you, man. Thank you. Seriously.
Yeah, no worries. The first question, and I'll give context because people have really been confused by it. Yeah, it's Vended Thoughts. That's the name of the podcast, and I just wanted to have at least one question that relates to vending. The whole podcast is not about vending, but I always leave it with one question, vending related in a sense. Do you drink Pepsi or Coke? Which one would you prefer? Either way.
Ooh, okay. Well, look, I mean, if I was on a desert island, I needed to pick one. If my life depended on it, I would go Coke. But to be honest with you, I'm really not a soda guy. I don't like soda. I used to drink it a lot. Like if I'd get like Chipotle or something, but I don't know, man. As I've gotten older, it's just hasn't really sat well with me too much. I don't really like the way I feel after I drink soda. But I
100%
guess
with you.
if it's a yes or no question type deal, I'd go Coke.
All right, good to know. Yeah, Coke is the premier choice, it seems, here for people that do drink soda. But we have
Nice.
had the
Is this
last
part of
two
your
or three
data
people.
collection method over here?
In a sense, yes. In a sense, I'm
Perfect. I
trying
love
to
it.
figure out what I should sell more of in my vending machines. Correct.
Genius,
No, not
genius.
really. Oh man, that's funny that you would think about it that way. A true
Yeah,
marketer is always
that's where
thinking
my
about
mind goes.
data.
Exactly. Exactly.
Good to know.
Everything
Good
is
to know.
data.
We spoke on this a little bit. I don't know how much further you want to go into it. I guess you didn't really touch much on it, but truly generation. What inspired you to do that within the past? I want to say the past year you started that, and how's things been so far with it?
Yeah. It was 12 months ago when I started it. So,
12
a
months
little
to the
bit.
day.
I wish that'd be really cool. But 12 months to the month.
All right,
It was
cool.
like
That's
the last week of August of 2019 when I dove in.
all
Um,
right. Cool.
but so essentially, I this is kind of out of order since we're telling the story, but I was returning from Florida. Um, I in August of 2019, I had one more year left of school, so just the 2 semesters left, and my ability to take the rest of my courses online was wearing thin. So I needed to either come to Dobbs Ferry, finish up my education, or like take a gap year or something kind of crazy like that. And I was already so far ahead. I just turned 21 in April of 2020, and I graduated the month after. So I didn't want to jeopardize that early graduation and securing the bag, as they say, securing the bag of my degree so early, that I decided it would be smart in the summer of 2019 to come back home to New York. And so when I came back home to New York, I left my job in Florida, maintained a great reputation with those guys. And through working with those guys and that team, I got to travel a bit and go to a lot of different events and take 1,300 phone calls, talk to people from every single state in the U.S., like almost every country within reason. And it was just a plethora of connections that I had made. And I was getting a taste of everything, really. I was getting a taste of like every industry, different lifestyles, different personality types, everything. And I was so fascinated by digital ads. And I knew I wanted to get out of e-commerce a little bit just because, you know, it just, again, it's just a preference thing. I wasn't really interested in pursuing e-commerce in the long term, again, it wasn't something that I'd be able to do personally sustainably. I just wasn't a 100% all-in fan of the industry, and so I knew I wanted to take my absolute favorite part of e-commerce and run away with it somewhere else, and that was the digital media buying aspect of things. And so as I sat in my apartment with, all of my belongings sort of scattered around, I literally started drafting up my business plan before I even officially moved into my apartment. I had my priorities straight, clearly. But I said, what can I do to provide value to people with the expertise of digital media buying? And um, it didn't take me too long to realize, oh, I could start a digital marketing agency. Great. And that was kind of it. And then I think, maybe 48 hours later, I had already, came up with the name, had gotten a draft of my logo made, bought the domain, set up shop, as I like to call it, got all the social media, and started planning out my approach. And the next 6 months I spent basically going to class, coming back home, and just sharpening my axe, as I'd say. I didn't do any prospecting. I didn't look for any clients until I knew that what I had on the other end of the sale was going to be, A plus, because as somebody that's brought in $300,000 in revenue on the phones for sales for a company, I realized you don't have to be good at quote unquote sales. There's no such thing as being a good salesman. You just have to know everything about what you're selling, and it has to be good. There's a little thing
point.
that I always tell myself: if my prospect on the phone has 100 questions for me, I need to be able to provide them 200 answers. And if you can do that and you're a good communicator, you can make them laugh, you can put a smile on their face, you could show them the value, because there's no such thing as a good pressure salesman, or, like I even said, a good salesman. It's just a good person selling a good product. And that's really all it is. And so I knew that obviously the name True Lead Generation does not have the brand equity of something like Amazon or Nike or Apple. So it wasn't the name that was going to sell anything. It was the value. And so what I did was I formulated what we call at True Lead Generation the product-led growth system. And so this is also known as the SaaS 2.0, also known as freemium, commonly known as. In other words, when I'm prospecting, I simply provide business owners in any industry with free tools. It's sort of like a sample platter, ranging from reputation tools, listing tools, advertising tools, social marketing tools, review management tools, you name it. And I set them up with a sign-in. They log into the dashboard, which we had built, and they're able to use stuff right away. They connect their Google My Business, they connect their Facebook business page, and they can just start right away. And I have tons of people that are using the software, and most of my clients come from people that are saying, this is kick ass, man. Like, can I get more access? Because again, it's freemium. So that's the business model that we have. It's the quote unquote try before you buy. But business owners log in, they connect their accounts. It's one dashboard. They sign in and they go to town and use our free tools. And then anytime they want, I'd get on a strategy session with them. We could talk it out, talk about their goals, see if they're a good fit for us, and we get moving. And we're happy to say that all of our clients have come back month after month with higher budgets, which is something that we're super proud of. And we're just looking to grow at this point. We've got 7 people working at the firm right now. Customer success, we've got program directors, marketing strategists, really everything. And we're just looking to continue to grow.
Wow. What a legend. I knew you were a legend. But that is really cool. Yeah, no worries. What is the website?
The website's called True Lead Gen, TrueLeadGen.com.
Okay, cool. I'll have to check that out. That is pretty cool that you offer those tools, man. Wow.
Thank you.
Awesome. We've definitely been out of touch because I haven't known much about what you're doing with that agency, but that sounds really cool. And I might want to talk to you on that. After this, we'll definitely have to have a conversation.
We'd be able to help you out for sure, man. Yeah.
All right, sounds good to me. That is super cool, man. What an awesome story yet again with just that Jared guy. I thought that was always funny when I saw you say that, and it was just some random internet guy. I've seen his ads, and bam, you were working for him, selling like crazy. That is such a cool skill set to have, and obviously, I love how you said sales isn't really like a skill you can have. There are supposedly natural born salesmen, but they're people basically like you. I would say you're very, I guess the word could be charming, but you're in your approach, you're very, warm with it. So I think you can make someone smile pretty easily. You're very extroverted, I would say. I mean, you
I'm
might be an
blushing,
introvert.
Dom. I'm blushing over here.
Yeah.
Called me charming. That's beautiful. I appreciate that.
No, but,
But
seriously, I feel like you have that charm. I meant it in like that kind of
no,
approach.
I really appreciate that, and I mean it's just to call a spade a spade. I mean it's true. I know that like I'm a friendly guy. I get along with people, and as I'm reading sales book after sales book, I start seeing like um, there's 6 types of personality types, and for personality type A you need to approach like this, and for personality type B you need to approach like this. And I was like, I'm not gonna spread six to 12 different versions of Dean Pagano depending on who I'm talking to on the phone. Like I'm gonna get on the phone with anybody in the world, um, you know, introduce myself, ask them questions about them as a human being. I'm not just diving in like a shark trying to take their money. That's not what I'm doing. I'm trying to provide value. I'm trying to create relationships. I'm trying to show people that we have something that we have busted our balls on. And when I tell you, I mean, I did the entire first semester of school, my senior year, just, the past 7-8 months, from August 2019 to whenever, early March, early February, or mid February. I did not do anything but build this, just build value. And so when I get on the phone, it's not so much like I feel bad taking somebody's money. It's like I literally have worked so hard, almost a full year on something that I'm so unbelievably proud of. And like, I'm so happy that this person that is trying to grow their business is on the phone with me, because I just know what we can do for them. And that feeling of excitement and passion for like being able to grow somebody's business with them is why I do it. And it's a really special thing, I believe.
Absolutely, and I think there's a lot that you can do to help someone that doesn't know digital marketing, and that's pretty much it. That a lot of people don't understand it, and they don't understand what trend is kind of happening with the world. We're shifting online. Think about all the businesses that really had to learn how to shift online during the pandemic, and even still now, the online ordering systems and all the marketing to get your restaurant still out there. I mean, it really does take a lot still.
Absolutely.
And
And I'll say also too, just since you brought up, the pandemic and COVID, like that's honestly one of the most common like reactions when I catch up with people and they're like, how is business going? And I'm like, oh, it's going great. And they're like, don't you sell to businesses? I'm like, yeah, I do. And they're like, well, everybody's out of business because of the pandemic. I'm like, well, there's one way of thinking about it, but then there's the other way of thinking about it or looking at it, by looking at device usage during this pandemic. I don't think a lot of people realize what happened during COVID in terms of consumer habits with their online presence. It almost
absolutely.
tripled. People were on social media for a minimum of 9 hours a day. Like when I say that, I'm not, there's 24 hours in a day. People were almost on social media more than they were sleeping during the pandemic for the large majority of it, for months at a time. And so if digital advertising wasn't grossly underpriced before COVID, during COVID it was a gold mine. We were seeing click-through rates and cost per clicks that were so astronomically low for our clients, that even though there's a pandemic, people still need to eat. Even though there's a pandemic, people still need to get groceries. people still need things. That it doesn't go away just because there's a pandemic. Just the method in which we interact physically is changing. And so with that mindset, we were able to acquire a lot of new clients. And now, as we see things starting to look up, the people that we're able to work with true during the pandemic, that were able to, blast through as the leading, the top rated, let's just call it a bar in the area, or the top rated construction company in the area. We see them absolutely crushing it now that people are, somebody's looking for a gym now, or somebody's looking to go to the movies. They're going to go on Google, and whatever's the top rated, or they've seen the most ads for during quarantine, it's going to be top of mind, and that's who's going to win in the end.
Yeah. Wow. Super interesting to hear you talk about this stuff, and even your numbers on it. And I did see the statistic with people being on their phones more. So I mean, it is common sense in hindsight of that, but I don't think people realized going through it when you're stuck at home or told to stay at home, or what is it, WFH life, you're working from home life,
Right.
you're going to be on your phone more. You don't have a boss over your neck. So it's interesting perspective that you were able to get people out in front of, their end customer cheaper, or even just easier in a way, because they were looking for, those certain things. So it's
Exactly.
very cool. Marketing is cool, man. And I'm glad you're having success with that. And I can only wait to see what comes of, your future clients and your future things that you do.
We're just getting started over here, Dom. Super excited.
Very awesome, man. Super excited for that. And you are young, man. You're 21 years old. So definitely a lot to look forward to, man.
Thank you, man.
You have your podcast, which I briefly talked about, DeanTV, for those who want to check it out. DeanTV with Dominick Barbato, episode 4. Good episode. Go check that out. I appreciate you having me on, man. I really do appreciate it. How has your podcast been growing as of late? And do you have any tips for me?
Yeah.
Anyone?
So what people don't realize. So my podcast has been, first off, podcasting. I'm so pumped to see not only that you're podcasting, but that you're having me on your podcast. Because it is so much fun. And as somebody that loves to consume podcasts, any chance I get, driving, working out, I love to just flip on a podcast. I love it. And it's, to me, it's like, it really opens up the ability to like basically multitask reading. Like I look at podcast listening as like reading a book, and there's such a huge opportunity there because people know the value that they can get in a podcast. And so yeah, I'm going on a rant here, but anyway, what's been exciting with me is I've been seeing a lot of growth organically, simply by, everything that's happening when I'm not actually podcasting. And what I mean by that is, when you're posting about your podcast, make sure that you're tagging the people that you have on your podcast, so that whatever platform it is, whether it's LinkedIn, Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, that these people are almost incentivized. You're almost like calling them out. Like these people are incentivized to share it with their audience. And especially LinkedIn, man. LinkedIn is unreal. I talked about it on another podcast with these guys, the Learn Lead podcast with Landon and Antonio, two Long Island guys. But I talked about LinkedIn organic reach a lot. And just for example, I was split testing if I didn't do any other social media marketing for my most recent podcast with Chuck Garcia. I just posted on LinkedIn, and that is my most viewed podcast. And it took 48 hours to be my most viewed on it. And it was simply from him leaving a comment on my podcast because I tagged him on the LinkedIn post.
Yeah. And I started the podcasting as a way to leverage my time in a sense, in the exact same way you're saying, but it honestly has pivoted into honestly really enjoying having conversations with people. You, in a way, have intimate conversations with people over an hour or so conversation. And it's very cool. After I come off my podcast, I'm always excited, and I always come away learning something awesome. Like I'm always learning from them. And I think that's the difference between that and being like a YouTuber. A YouTuber, you're just talking to a camera. On a podcast,
Mhm.
you actually get to talk to someone. So it's two
Mhm.
different things.
And especially as a host too, one of the things I love about that is, once again, as a podcast consumer, I'll hear a conversation theme going on. I'll hear people talking about, a topic, and while I'm listening, as I hear the guests start to wrap up what they're saying, I'm always in my head like I have like 6 questions that I want to ask this guy, or this girl, and I'm just like, I wish I could be like talking to this person right now. And so like having like the freedom as as a podcast host and a creator to be able to steer the conversation wherever you want, ask the questions that you want, it's so fun to me as well. Because like it's especially like something like this with me and you, we have such busy schedules, but like I'll never forget how much fun we had and how great it was to catch up, whether we were recording or not. But like when we did episode 4 of DeanTV, you came up to my apartment, we sat down, we probably talked for like 3 hours off of the podcast. And it was just such a great
Absolutely.
way of like bringing us together. And sort of, as bad as it sounds, like giving an excuse to be able to like catch up with an old friend or like old mentors, mentees, like people that in your field, professionals, creatives, whatever it is. I think everybody can add some value, and it's so much fun, like you said.
It is, and I think the future is audio in some way. You have, billion-dollar companies, Google, Amazon, Apple, all have speakers in which you talk to, and they spit something out, whether music or even a podcast. I actually got my podcast somehow on Alexa. So, like, if you go into your Alexa app, you can actually find my podcast and put it on your Alexa speaker. It was
Sick.
very simple. It's like your RSS feed type of thing. You just pull it
Mhm.
from Anchor. But yeah, man, it does give an excuse. It was super nice seeing you that day. And I honestly, that podcast came out really cool. You were able to steer the questions in such a way where I feel like there was a lot of value. There was a lot of value provided in that
I
podcast.
tried.
Yeah. And I think there's a lot in this as well because you've only been at the True Lead Gen for, the year, but I think before that you were always in the digital marketing space, looking at things online, podcasts, working with Jared. So it's
Mhm.
really cool to hear from you and your perspectives on the internet as well. But
Absolutely, man.
we'll hop into the next question here. And I think it's a nice pivot because I find this question interesting. I hope you understand it, and I've tried to break it down a little better for each guest. But is
Yeah.
your view of business grounded in reality, i.e., meaning the goals and ambitions you have, are they well thought out and concrete in nature? I only ask this question because I think when I was younger, my view of business wasn't grounded in reality. And I always try to ask people to see what their perspective is on business at this current moment.
That's a very complex question. You might have to give me. So are you? I don't want to give you like. I want to give you a very thoughtful answer here, but I just want to make sure
Sure.
that I'm fully understanding the question. So are you basically
Okay.
asking me like if my my strategy and my like goals for my business, if they're like like concrete, meaning what do you mean by that?
I try to use concrete more so just to understand if you have a basis. If I explain it from my instance, I started one of my first things when I think I was 13 or 14 was Vima, and I know you've heard of it. You're on Long Island. Vima, the energy drink, it was a pyramid scheme. Like it was
Yeah, of
legit a
course.
pyramid scheme. You sold the energy drinks to people. They went down years later, find 20, 30, 40 million dollars, but the reality of the business when I got into it, I didn't think of, making no money or that I was in a pyramid scheme. I thought like, hey, I'm going to make $1 million. That was it. It didn't matter. I'm going to sell energy drinks and make $1 million through a pyramid scheme. That's not grounded in reality in any sense. So I always ask like, with your business at this current moment, are you grounded in your goals and your metrics and what you want to accomplish? Because I don't know, maybe I've just been led down sometimes when I set high ambitious goals when I'm 13 or 14 and then I'm like, crap. I
Right.
mean, we all do that when we're young, but
That's a great question, and I appreciate you clarifying that because my answer was going to be far off from what the question was intending. Um, yeah. My ambition is definitely realistic. Um, here's I'll tell you an anecdote. When I moved down to Florida, that was the first time in my life where I took a step back, and there were moments where literally right in front of my face, I had never seen, when I say in front of my face, I'm talking about on a computer screen, not cash money, but I had never seen such a large amount of money. And then I started my mind started running, and I started thinking like, I hate even bringing this up because it's such a cliche to talk about on a podcast between two entrepreneurs. But if you look at a guy like Bezos or Zuckerberg, and you think about their net worths, like nobody in the world, except a very select few people, but like nobody between me and you, Dom, can fathom how much money, $100 billion plus it actually is. $80 billion, like $50 billion, let alone $1 billion, let alone $1 million tangible, like what that actually means, what that feels like, what it looks like, what doors it opens up, what opportunities it opens up. And the reason I realized that was because, without kind of blowing too many people's spots, just in case, somebody, from my old team listens to this, I'm not going to say like numbers and accounts and specifics like that, but we were spending more money a day on advertisements than I had ever actually obtained accumulated, like a running accumulation in my entire life in one day. And this is just a small e-commerce consultation firm in Boca Raton, Florida, that nobody's ever heard of. A select few people have seen advertisements for. And like, if you walked around, you're just a nobody. Like I work at Ecom Hacks and I work at 12th Bean. Like nobody knows what that is. But we were spending, like we were a multi-million-dollar firm. And so when I realized that was the first realization that led me to realize, like, number one, I need to dream bigger. That was number one. Number two, this money exists, and there's no reason that Joe Schmo deserves it any more than Dean Pagano. There's no reason. There is none. And that was it for me. It was like, I know that, and I'm not like a money driven person. I'm a value driven person. I love what I do. I love businesses. I love the hustle. I love every time I get to work with a new client. I remember the 17-year-old kid flipping t-shirts in the parking lot, getting written up for cutting class because I wanted to sell three shirts. Like I remember that like me like literally tapping my leg in calculus, waiting for the bell to ring because I was waiting to close a long sleeve t-shirt deal in the freaking hallway in 8th period. Like that's what I think of. And that is so like rooted deep down inside of me that's my motivator. And so like, number one, grounded in reality, if I can go the next 5 years and it stays where it is, like, would I be like jumping for joy? Probably not. But would I be like regretful and miserable? Not at all. Because every day I wake up, I don't work a job. I get to talk to people that are passionate and then share the same interests as me. I get to see progress. I get to look at results. I get to make, executive decisions. It's fun. It's exhilarating for me. And so when, especially, way back in the beginning of the podcast, I talked about my beginnings in art. I think about like a lot of my friends that I grew up with that stuck with art. Like the whole mindset there is that whole, like, you'll never work a day in your life if you do what you love. And it's like a business doesn't have to be like worth millions and millions of dollars to be successful. It just has to continue to grow year over year. And like, as long as you're making progress, that's successful in my eyes. And so like my expectations for true lead generation are not unrealistic. It's just that I know that most of what you see online with the whole, like, I made $1 million in 3 days, swipe up and I'll teach you how. That's not usually it. That's not really it. That's not sustainable. It's not even real sometimes. A lot of times I'll blow the cover of every single quote unquote e-com guru out there. The tactic is you just buy all of your store's fake products. You film your marketing material, and then the next day after you've got your screenshots of your Shopify store doing $100,000, you just refund yourself all the money. And that's
I've even
basically what
heard
these people do.
I heard one better with that is you can literally just buy your products on a fake payment gateway, which is like your test
Right.
Stripe account, and then you could just have crazy numbers as
Yeah.
well. But it's so screwed up.
Exactly.
It's
And
so
then you
screwed up.
make some shit course that like you could have found on YouTube for free. You say like,
Yeah,
here's how you you make a Shopify store. You sign in with your email, make a password, and then you're done. It's like, oh,
yeah.
thanks. Did I need to pay you $500 for that?
No, the information is totally out there. And honestly, I did become one of these course guys. I do sell, I think I have 3 courses at this point in the vending niche. And the thing with mine is like I want people to pay to play. I heard once like you pay attention, you pay if you pay, you'll pay attention. That's what I've heard
Hmm.
before. And I think it's a good thing. If someone's to pay me for a phone call, even if the phone call goes over by a half hour, 15 minutes, whatever it is, I don't care because I know you're serious. You paid me and you're going to do the things. Whenever these people have paid, they've gotten vending machines, they've gotten vending accounts. So it's very cool to see that. But the people that don't pay, they're always complaining, like, how do I start? How do I do this? But no, if someone's willing to put their money where their mouth is, it's a lot different thing. But
Man, and don't get me wrong, I'm not knocking courses, dude. I love
no, yeah,
self education. I think courses are a great tool, but I'm just saying like
scam courses.
this is unfortunately the reality of a lot of these courses, and it's very, and I say unfortunate with bold letters, because there's so much valuable courses out there that are worth every single dime, whether it's a $20 course all the way up to like a $5,000 course. But the problem is like for every valuable course, there's too often somebody that's just trying to scam. And when you're in the industry, you're able to see right through it by looking at the person's Instagram page basically instantly. But for a lot of people that are kind of just getting hit with a very enticing advertisement, it's just unfortunate and that's one of the reasons that I had to get out of e-commerce. There's sort of a stigma of being in that industry of like, oh, you're an e-com guy. Like, do you live in a mansion? Did you buy a Lamborghini at 17 years old? It's like, no,
Yes.
I didn't. But
Yes, it's there's definitely there's a show to it, and the thing is, you obviously if you show you make money and stuff, people are more willing to buy into you. We have a thing called mirror neurons, which is
mm,
like we can basically with the chemicals in our brain, we can live through what we see on our phones and TVs. So it's really interesting when you're scrolling through Instagram and stuff like that. You're kind of mirroring those people, and that's why like you're the average of the 5 people around you, which I didn't know this and probably till about 3 weeks ago. You're only the average of those people is because your body naturally mirrors them in one extent or another. So those 5
right.
people around you are just so similar to you, or you adapt to them. So
Hmm.
it's very interesting.
Absolutely.
But going back to your answer to that question, and we'll move on. I can't believe it's almost an hour already. Your answer
Is
on
it
that was
cool if
very
sorry to cut you off. Is it cool if we go over an hour? Because
yeah,
cool,
absolutely. It's
cool.
just at like 59, we have to just tell the Instagram people that they got to go to YouTube to hear the rest of it. But
Oh, yeah, 100%. If
but
they're not on
my
YouTube
point,
already, man, they're crazy. They're missing out on a ton of value. But anyway,
yeah, 100%.
sorry, go ahead. Go ahead.
No, you're fine. Your point on that was well answered. Although long in an
Very
answer,
long.
it made a lot of sense on the now I'm long on my answer on the fact that your business is grounded in reality. Unlike me, I was fed pretty much lies in my pyramid scheme, and that's obviously what happens in a pyramid scheme. But for you, you were in the trenches, you were hustling, you were working your ass off. For me, like the vending thing and all that stuff, it honestly did come pretty easy to me. So it's interesting when work is easy and it's not uncomfortable to do. But my point on that is your business is grounded in reality. It's awesome to hear. You're a hustler. You can hear that you're willing to roll your sleeves up and just work if you have to. And that's essentially all I want to hear basically to that answer. But a lot of people have a hard time answering it. You've answered it pretty well. And that's all I have to say
Mm,
there.
thank you, man. Thank you. Yeah, I mean, it was a super long answer. One of my faults is like I have like ideas bouncing around my head. I just jump on them and then I forget what I was even talking about in the beginning. But I'm just throwing everything
No,
out
it's
there
okay.
for the
And
Vended
that's
Thoughts
fine. Yes.
audience.
We're having conversation, and I'm glad you had the time to even to go along, bro. Because sometimes it's hard when the other person doesn't have the time. I gotta make
Mm,
up for time, but we don't have to make up for time. And I know people are definitely learning from what you know in the ecom world and everything you're doing. Maybe they can see through the
good. Yeah.
flaws and just understand that.
Hmm.
Um, but let's move on. We got a lot more awesome questions, a lot more answers from you.
Throw them at
Um,
me, man. Let's do it.
you got it. Do you learn from your mistakes?
You have to. If you're not
Yes.
learning, you're dying. It's the
Very
truth.
true.
It's the truth. I mean, if you're not, um, the only time you make a mistake is when you're not learning. It's not a mistake if you learn something from it. It's just a,
It's
a
super true.
cost. It's like if you start a business and it fails, the mainstream definition of fail, meaning like you needed to shut it down probably because of a lack of financial capital, or maybe just some external force in your life maybe happened in your life that you needed to go back to work or whatever it was. People always label that as a failure, but that's not a failure until you walk away from it and you're not taking anything with you. You
Makes
know what I mean?
sense.
Like Mountaintop
Yeah.
commercially was a failure. It started 3 years ago or 4 years ago at this point. Wow, I can't believe that, saying that out loud. 4 years ago, whatever. 2.5, 3 years later, we shut it down. But I learned everything that I know about business from that company. So how can I look at that as a failure? Anyways, that's my answer.
Yeah. No, absolutely. And it's a good answer. And I think that's super true. I like your perspective on that because it's true. But yeah, let's push along to this next question. And it's interesting to go between the two sides, but what is your happiest moment in your life? I mean, you're 21 years old, a lot of more happy moments to come, but I'm curious if you
Mm.
have a happy moment thus far.
Yeah, I think that's a great question, man. I want to give you a very thoughtful answer. I think the happiest moment in my life is it's there's not one moment that stands out in my mind that I could say like this is the happiest moment of my life. I think it's that um me being able to reflect at the point that I'm at right now and look at what I have in my life, the relationships that I've built, the um, temptations that I've been able to see past, and in some tough times, some like dangerous situations, being able to like have a good head on my shoulders, being able to look at the person that I am and I'm growing into. I think one thing that's very important in terms of happiness is number one, sacrifice, making sure that every little action that you do, or the majority of the little actions that you do, because look, we all have off days. We're all going to skip the gym one day. It doesn't mean you're not going to get big or reach your fitness goals. That's just life. But being able to um, make sure that your actions are aligned with your goals, and I can confidently say that it makes me really, really happy, um, to honestly say, like sitting here right now on this podcast with you, like 95% of my actions are aligned with my 3 month, 6 month, 12-month, 5 year goals, like 10-year goals. And that makes me really happy. And every moment, every day that I wake up and I think about that truth, like there's really nothing on the micro level, like no little tiny setback, like somebody cutting me off in traffic, or like, like picking up food from a restaurant, it's like the wrong order or something. Like nothing really throws me off, just because I everything's in perspective for me. I think that makes me really, really happy.
Yeah. Wow. Very, very good perspective, man. And that's awesome that you're seeing that at your age. I think I only went through that probably a year ago, 2 years ago, maybe. I think life life is life, and it's good that you can reflect on it and be happy in the moment and in the process of everything, which is sometimes people lack. It's like, oh, I want $1 million. Well, the thing is, I want $1 million. I can't get it. But the thing is, you're not, setting out to do it. But at least with you, you're aligning yourself with your end goal and with what you want in life. And that's pretty much success in a nutshell, is just, progressing towards a worthy idea. And
Hmm.
that is what you're doing. So
Exactly.
very awesome, man. And this kind of does go into the last question, so I'm curious on like a brief answer with this. You're young, you're talented. What do you see derailing your plans in business? If you know, I don't know. Yeah, what do you see derailing what you just told me about everything working out over the next 5 years? What can derail that?
Yeah, myself. It's
True.
there's nothing else that can derail my life but me. And I think that everybody listening to this podcast needs to understand that. Stop blaming things on COVID. Stop blaming things on, I don't want to turn this into political podcast, but stop blaming things on the government. Stop blaming things on, like, man, we had this podcast scheduled. For those of you listening that aren't from, the Northeast or the East Coast for that matter, Dom and I both just got hit with a hurricane. Like, I'm doing this podcast from my uncle's home, because I have no power at my house, and so he was kind enough to let me, come here and work for the day, use his Wi-Fi. That's such a small, like, you know, micro thing, like, oh, God forbid we had to reschedule the podcast for next week or something. But the point is, like, if there's a will, there's a way, and you are the only person that can hold you back from achieving your goals. And the moment that you blame something else other than yourself and you don't take full responsibility for it, that's when you start to lose. And that's just the truth. There's just no other way of putting it.
I think we switch roles. I think you become my mentor, honestly.
Oh, Dom, that's humbling, man. Seriously.
No worries, but I really like your perspective on that. That is super true. And these are the type of answers that I want on this podcast. I want to get in everyone's brain. I want to have well thought out questions with well thought out answers. And your answer was perfect to what I think, because honestly, in hindsight, okay, what you're saying makes sense. But before that, I don't know if what you said would really make sense to me. And I think that's the biggest thing. At the end of the day, anything that's going to derail what you're doing is going to be yourself. If a business fails, nothing is going to derail your life but your mindset to that event. And I think that's such a cool thing. Everything is neutral until you put meaning to it. So I think that's an awesome perspective that you have, man.
Mm-hmm.
Love that. Is there something else you would love to do? Switching gears, and any hobbies or other things you enjoy besides your current business? I think you play guitar. I could be wrong, but
Yes,
let's hear what
sir.
you got.
Yeah,
All right, cool.
I love music. I love to play the guitar. Honestly, for me, uh, I don't paint as much as I should now, which is unfortunate. But I love art, and in that art category, it was, for me, it was always guitar and painting. Um, my dad is a professional artist, so I basically grew up in a home that doubles for an art studio, and so, um, in my home, there's an art studio, and floors and walls are covered in paint, and there's supplies and everything, and it's like just a really cool kind of creative space, with amps and guitars and picks and all that stuff, wires, and I love to. I've done a couple of open mics and some bars and stuff, but then that was sort of around the time that the world shut down. And so obviously, I can't really blame myself for that one, because the bars that I was playing at literally just shut down and there's really nothing I could do. But I've been working on my craft, and I'd love to continue that. I love playing in front of people and live music and that. So if I wasn't in business, honestly, man, I'd be taking a much more difficult route. And I have so much respect for musicians and people that are in any type of art, because it's a really rough, it's really rough on the mindset, when you're trying your best and nothing's really happening. Like, at least with business, if things aren't going too good, maybe you could squeeze out like a few customers or a few clients here and there and still get paid and still like make money to live. But like, hustling with music is no joke. Like, if you're not, you got to work a side job to support yourself, and you've got to really, just hope for the best, keep hustling. But yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. All right. Good to know. I mean, I don't know if I necessarily knew the art side of you that much. I knew your dad uh does that, and it is an interesting perspective in the fact that you think that it is a harder career choice for people, and it is an entire process with the way you create your music. And art in itself does come in business in a sense. Business is an art. There are a lot of, moving pieces and a lot of different things that you kind of metaphorically have to paint in a way where,
Mhm.
the end person who sees it is going to really have a nice experience with it. And the same with art. People buy art because of the way it makes them feel or what they see in it, or, you know, something of that nature. But it is very cool. They do kind of blend together the creativeness with entrepreneurship. So I can see why you also like business in that sense, because you can kind of paint your brush a little bit with your business.
Yeah, exactly. It really comes down to entrepreneurship is really just creative solutions. Like that's
That's
really
all
what
it is. Yeah.
entrepreneurship is. It's every single day there's a new, like, when you were a kid and you'd go to like Chili's or like Outback Steakhouse and they have those like menus and they give you the crayons and there's one of those mazes, and you have to like figure out a way to get through, and sometimes there's multiple different ways, but like it's being able to constantly, like when you're making a painting and you're up close to the painting and you're putting in fine details. If you watch an artist and you watch like a hyperlapse, like a speed time lapse of somebody making painting, you'll see them stepping back all the way, looking at the full thing, stepping forward, putting fine details, maybe a couple more brush strokes, stepping all the way back, looking again, stepping in, more brush strokes, back in, back in, back in. It's constantly, that's what entrepreneurship is. You need to look at, the micro level, but then never take your eye off the macro level. If I could put my left eye on the macro and my right eye on the micro of my business at all times, that's the best way to do it, but that's impossible. So you just got to go back and forth, shift your mindset just like you're painting a masterpiece. And then eventually you take a step back and you're like, damn, like all these little lines and brush strokes and dots and little shading here and there turned into like a beautiful full picture. And that's what it is. That's like what entrepreneurship it means to me.
Mind blown with your answers.
Dude, I
But
appreciate that, man.
I really love that perspective, and that is what business is. And I think there's two sides to it, because you could not be grounded in reality and go 5 years in business and never look back. And so a reason why I answered that question, or you could be grounded in reality every quarter, which you should do, or every week. You look back, reflect on your week, kind of change things up for the next week and the next week, and you keep doing that, and eventually you're going to have a masterpiece if you continue to build on that craft or whatever that business is in that sense. And super awesome perspective. This podcast is probably going to be one of the first ones that I break up and try to push out the audio, because I like a lot of things that you're saying, man.
Thank you, Dom. I appreciate that.
No worries at all, bro. Super awesome. Awesome perspective. Keep your perspective going, because I really do enjoy it.
Always,
But
man. Always.
what do you believe makes a successful marketing agency?
It's
And I think you did talk about it, but I know it's value and whatnot. But what else? I guess do you
yeah,
see?
it's actually really funny. Because I'm gonna go complete 180 here, Dom. And my last answer to your last question was just about painting and creativity, right? But what makes a successful marketing agency? Although I'm an artistic guy, it's data. It's cold hard data. There's no creativity to it. It's if you give me $100 and I can't give you at least $100 back, that's not good. If you give me $100 and I give you $1,000 back, that's great. That's really it. Like if I'm working with a client and they have a budget and they give me, here's $5,000, Dean, make me money. Okay. My team and I go to work 30 days later. We have executive reporting, whether it's weekly or monthly, you can filter through that on the website or on the dashboard, excuse me. And you can look and you can see, as we're quantifying sales, cost per click, ad spend, click through rate, ROAS, all the analytics. And if you look at it and you say, okay, well, we spent $5,000, and our gross profit for that that month of ad spend was $7,000. Great. Okay, let's do it again with $6,000. Okay, let's do it again with $10,000, and that's really it. There's really no other way to say it. I mean,
Yeah,
it's
I mean,
numbers.
I think it's a numbers game with business. That is true. There is the creative side to it, but at the same time, We hope to outsource the creative parts, and as a business owner, you folks focus solely on, you know, churning out data and, you know, pushing money out in any way. Obviously, you're in a business where you're in B2B. There are people that do B2C and etc. But it is interesting to hear that data is powerful at the end of the day, and if you have enough data, you'll be able to make more money. And I understand your long-term perspective with your agency, but it's good answer.
One thing that I want to add in there too is this. That is how you make a successful marketing agency on the client facing side. But remember what I said, like, what's a reason that you won't succeed in business? Yourself. What's a reason that your business won't succeed? Your business. And who makes up a business? Your guys, your team, you know, your core. And so one thing that I think is super important is this. And I don't think that Jared will listen to this. I love Jared to death. And this is the first time I'm ever actually calling somebody out on a podcast. And this is actually pretty frightening, to be honest. But listen, here's the deal with Jared. I love Jared to death. I learned so much from him. He's a mentor to me. He's a friend. We still keep in touch. But there were times that I was literally living out of my car because times were so tough. And that's a whole nother story that I could, probably get into in another podcast, honestly, because I know you have your questions lined up. But there were times where the sales team was basically collapsing, and I was like, I couldn't afford my rent. I had to break my lease. I was homeless basically in South Florida for over 2 weeks. And I was living out of my car with everything that I owned inside of my Toyota RAV4. And every single day that I would, pull up to the office, even days that I slept at the office, Jared would pull up in his Lamborghini. And as somebody that is giving my blood, sweat, and tears to a team effort, seeing the man in charge pull up in a $250,000 car when you can't afford $800 per month to pay your rent is very hard and is very, very bad for your morale. And so making sure that you eat last as a leader is something that I will never, ever, ever take for granted. Like that is a core principle for me as a leader and somebody that has people working, with me on a project. That is huge. So.
Wow. I did not know that, bro. That is actually crazy.
Yeah. Crazy.
And
crazy.
that is a crazy ass perspective, because it's completely true. And I can't imagine, and I always have said this, you're going to be more successful than me. I can't imagine where you'll be in the next 3 years with your agency and your life, because I think your perspective on life is really grounded in everything. And, awesome, man. Very cool.
Dom, that means the world coming from you, man. I appreciate that.
No worries, bro. But moving on, next question. We've answered this question. I'm gonna be honest. I'm just gonna move past it. We did answer it. It is, what made you choose the business path you're on? We have kind of talked about that.
Yeah.
So I'll move on to the next question. To become the person you want to become, kind of a long-winded answer here. This is a question that goes back to even when, years ago when we were, I don't even know when it was when I first mentored you. I think it was in a Starbucks. It was. But
yeah, I think so.
Yes. To become the person you want to become, do you have to give the person you up now? But with some backing to that, it was a question you asked me years ago. Is it better to focus on your strengths or weaknesses? And at this point, I do believe it's better to focus on your strengths, build upon your strengths, because those become your foundational skills for your life and for other things you do. If you focus on your weaknesses, those might continue to be weaknesses in the future. So very interesting. And I'm just interested in your thought. Do you believe you have to give up who you are to become the person you want to be?
I don't think that. I think that breaking down your question, when you look at the word or the phrase giving something up, I think that's a very strong phrase. And so I don't think that you have to give up the person that you are, because at the end of the day, everybody's made up of genetics. Everybody has a past. Everybody is set into certain habits. However, at the same time, we are very malleable as human beings. Now, giving up the person that you are is very extreme. When I think about giving up the person that I am, it's like, if I want to be you know, a rock star, which like, yeah, deep down inside, that's like my dream is like to be like a rock star. I'm not going to wake up tomorrow and, you know, like start dressing like a punk, paint my nails black, wear crazy stuff, and like just like totally turn my shoulder on my business and the people that, you know, the stakeholders and my clients and people that are paying me like money to help them out, and my team, like I said, and just like only like play the guitar and just like put my middle finger up and be like, yeah, like I'm a rock star. Like that's extreme, but you can take small actions every single day. Again, every day, if your actions are aligned with your goals, then you just continue to build on the person that you are. And I think that it could be very dangerous to give up the person that you are now, because if you're proud of the person that you are now and you think that you need it to take it to an extreme level to become quote unquote successful, you're totally wrong. The person that you are right now will be successful. It's who you are. It's who you were 5 years ago. It's who you will be 5 years from now. I think it's just consistent action that's in line with your goals, to just continue to be the best version of yourself every day.
Yeah, absolutely. And I asked that question just to see people's perspective on, you know, where they're at in life sometimes. And most people don't say they have to give up who they are now for who they want to be. Personally, for me, I look at life as like certain levels for each thing. And I think between making $250,000 and $1,000,000 plus, it's not that you're giving up who you are, but you have to adapt and change to that next environment, because each environment requires you to level up in some sense, because to be able to handle $1,000,000, to make money, to multiply it, those are the hardest things for people, you know, and that's why, you know, people take jobs, because it's an easy way to make money. You don't have to start a business. But for me, I've always seen it as, to get to those next levels, I reflect, I sit with myself, and I look at parts of my life which I would have to give up that would get me there, whether it's time wasters, whether it's posting on Instagram or posting on Twitter, or, you know, eating junk food. You have to give up those certain things, not necessarily your entire self, but
And change is
that's
a
kind of
great
my
thing too. I think people need to start realizing that. There's an old kind of truth that I used to um, utilize when I was doing sales, and or you know, when I did sales initially and still today. But really, when someone was kind of not sure about whether they wanted to do, you know, invest into the product that we were providing or not, the question that I would always ask them is, if you do nothing, what happens? And the answer is, I stay the same. My business stays the same. My life stays the same. There's no change. And if you try, what's the worst that'll happen? You know, I'll lose $500. Okay. But the upside potential of trying it out is that there can be a huge momentum push forward. You know, you could start to scale your business in the right direction, etc. And so I think when you realize that not taking action means that you just remain exactly where you are right now, you'd be more willing to try things out, even with the understanding that you know, I could fail. And I think the most successful people are the people that are able to fail forward. And that was one of the first questions you asked me is do you learn from your failures? And my answer was, you have to. That's not even a question. You know, like I said, if you're not learning from your failures, then you're just dying. It's
which is
very,
true. And
very dark way of putting it, but it's true.
yeah, it absolutely is true. And very true sentiments put on this podcast, man. I really want to kind of break up everything you're saying and put them into clips. I just really like your perspective, and everyone should see it. And that's evolution. That change has to happen. That's just kind of how nature works. But you don't have to give up who you are in the sense of giving up me, Dominick Barbato, and just changing who I am the next day. But maybe some little things will change along the process, because you have to kind of adapt to your environment, you know.
Mm.
But what motivates you to work on your business?
I have a weird relationship with the word motivate. And the reason is, like, I always used to, when I was younger, I think that motivation was always like a, for lack of a better word, motivation was a motivator for me. But like as I've grown older, I've realized like you shouldn't have to seek motivation. The question, what motivates me to work on my business? It's not that there are days that I wake up and dude, all I want to do is pull the blankets back over me and sleep till 11 p.m. or 11 a.m.
Sleep all
you know,
day.
sleep all day. That's it. But it's not motivation, it's discipline. Like I don't think that motivation is as important as people play it out to be. And
Heck yeah, bro.
does that make sense? Like I really
No, I
want
mean,
the listeners to understand what I'm saying here. Like if you have things that motivate you, that's great. But if that motivation is removed from your life, does that mean you're not going to do that thing?
yeah,
Like
motivation is very external. I mean,
yeah,
maybe you have
like
some internal motivation, but usually it's the discipline that lasts longer because
mhm,
motivation has to be there every day for you, every hour. But if you have the discipline on every hour to do what you have to do for that hour, and go to the gym, do your things, that's way better than having the motivation to do it. And I
exactly.
love your perspective yet again on this because it's the biggest thing. I used to search for motivation from literally 17 to probably 21. What can
Mhm,
motivate me to work on it? And there are certain videos that will push you, but at the same time, it's either you have to listen to that video repeatedly and then the motivation of it dies out because you've heard it so often, or you just kind of have to figure it out on yourself and realize that it's not the motivation, it's what's behind what you're doing, the purpose. And I've shifted a lot of my business to purpose driven stuff, to giving back, because it
right.
makes, at the end of the day, when you're going to bed, what you're doing so much more meaningful to the entire world.
Exactly. And honestly, if there's one thing that your listeners here can get out of like this kind of segment here, it's whenever you're seeking motivation, remind yourself that you don't need motivation. You just need to remember the big picture, and you just need to be disciplined enough to realize that this one day that you want to skip out on, it might as well be the whole big picture. You might as well be saying, if I'm not going to work on my business today, there's tens of thousands of other entrepreneurs out there that will be, and their business is going to
Wow.
take another step up that mountain today, and mine's not, because I'd rather lay in bed and I'd rather watch YouTube videos and I'd rather watch Netflix, in the middle of the day. Dude, don't get me wrong. I don't want people to listen to this and think that I'm like one of those, like, I wake up at 3 a.m. and I work 18 hours a day. Like never, 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 never. Work-life balance is so important to me. I honestly stop working by like 3, 4 p.m., but I get my stuff done. When I'm working, it's not just going through the motions. Like I'm working. And I think what's important about that is one example that I really liked that kind of shifted my perspective on motivation was listening to an interview with David Goggins, who, for those of you that don't know, is just a very intense guy. He went through an extremely rough, abusive childhood, was 300 plus pounds, and now is considered one of the hardest people in the world, like shredded to a pulp. He's like a Navy SEAL that was also like a Marine or something crazy like that. And he also holds many crazy fitness records, like one in particular, the pull-up record. So he did
Wow.
thousands of pull-ups in a day or something like that, something crazy. And he didn't listen to any music. He didn't have any headphones or anything like that. And I remember somebody asked him after he broke this pull-up record of extreme, like thousands and thousands of pull-ups in like 60 minutes or something like that, why wasn't he listening to music? And he said, if you think for a second that I need to listen to some music to pump me up and get me into that killer winning mindset, that's already I've lost right there. And don't get me wrong, like David Goggins is a little bit extreme. Like if you can
Yeah,
chase that mindset, that's good for you. But like, I realize, like, taking it down to a normal human being level, not the David Goggins level, like you shouldn't seek that quote unquote like pump up music. It should just be discipline. It should just be, you want it bad enough. You don't need any extra push or any extra nudge to tell you work on your business. Like you want your business to succeed and you're like tired today. You want to get in the best shape of your life and you're tired today. like, oh, you're tired today. Like, it doesn't
Just push
matter. You
past
just
it.
need to
Yeah,
push
no, it
past
really
it.
doesn't
That's really
matter.
what it comes down
Yeah. And on the tire note, with David Goggins, I think his last name, I read his book, and he has something called the 40% rule. And it's basically when your mind thinks you're at the level 100 and whatever you're doing, you're 100% in, you still have a reserve of 40% more on top of that. So let's just say in fitness, if you're running and you think you're tired, you still have 40% more in you that you can push beyond that. And he's known for the running and hurting himself, but it's just super interesting. The discipline factor in that is motivation is good. Don't get me wrong. If you have
Mhm.
a girl in your life that motivates you or you can share your business with, it's nice to have that sentiment. But at the same time, is that always going to be there? Does that motivation lack in, you actually working on your business? So I think a lot of entrepreneurs get stuck in the nitty gritty of I'm starting a business to make more money than my job. And I think you don't start a business for that reason. You start a business to provide value, like you're saying, because money is only a byproduct of value creation. If you're not creating value for nature, the environment, for people, for whatever you're selling, then basically you're not a business. And I think that's just an interesting perspective for me. Vending machines, I'm vending out a bag of chips. Someone's hungry. There's other things beyond that, like impulse buying with them, but you get my point that there has to be value creation for every dollar spent.
Of course, always. You
So
you really need to want it.
I like your perspective on that, though. We're gonna cut up your little like Eric Thomas clip of you saying, if you need that motivation, I'm gonna cut that up. It's gonna be good.
Cool, man. Cool. Yeah, yeah. Right on.
Moving on though, what makes you take on I think your answer is going to be similar to this, and you can let me know. But what makes you take on uncomfortable tasks? It seems like you're disciplined.
Yeah. So most of the time that I'm gonna take on an uncomfortable task, it's me kind of kind of getting into the mindset that number one, the other side of this discomfort is going to provide me an immense amount of value. So, like, go through it now, um, and
And
whether
then
it's like reap
later
the
you can
benefits.
just live in it. Yeah, reap the benefits. Yeah.
Exactly. And so it's like nobody says that anything is going to be easy, and you don't really know what that means until you go through something. Like, as a business owner, in your head, it's like starting a business. If you learn about it, if you read about it, it's like, I want to start when I started Mountaintop, it was like, I want to start a clothing company. All right, all I need to do is like draw a logo, like, illustrate it into a digital format, get the files, find a printing press or like a, shirt printing company on Long Island, print out the shirts, and then like sell them. And it's like super easy. And then like I started getting into it. And remember, this is like 17-year-old me. And then, money started going in and going out. And I was like, 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 I need to keep track of this. And, spreadsheets, Excel, Google Sheets, it was all new to me. And so, like, right there, that was a very uncomfortable thing for me. I mean, it sounds very silly saying like, oh, spreadsheets, but 17-year-old me that had just taken drawing and painting for my entire life, looking at a spreadsheet, I was like, like, right there at 17 years old, I could have been like, okay, yeah, I'm not going to be an entrepreneur. Like, let me go
Yeah.
back to drawing. Like, but no, I was just like,
Yeah,
okay, this is obviously a pillar. Like, this is obviously a like a interface. The whole idea of a spreadsheet is something that I need to learn. It's either I learn it or I will fail as a business owner. And it was very uncomfortable at the time looking at it, and it was complex for me. And obviously, that's such a basic example of something very simple. But, like I say, at the time, you needed
it
to
hits the
adapt.
point home.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And
Yeah,
so
you
that
have
was
to adapt.
hmm
Yeah. Yeah, yeah,
and
yeah,
those
yeah.
things
And
always,
I go
nowadays
ahead.
they're a little bit more complex, obviously, having more experience. Like, something crashes on my website, and then I look at the website and I see like thousands of lines of code, and I'm like, oops. Like, I don't know what I'm doing here. But like, you gotta either like pay somebody to do it, or you gotta man up, go on YouTube, try and figure out what you did, and like try and fix it yourself. And it's very uncomfortable. Like, I feel like I'm literally playing a game of Operation, that old board game with like the buzzer and like the little things that you got to pull out of the guy's body,
Yeah.
the tweezers. Like when I'm going through lines of code, I know like if I accidentally delete one character, I'm just going to throw off the whole site and end up having to pay a developer. So like it's very uncomfortable, but man, like that's it. Like you
You'll learn
can't
from that.
throw
Yeah,
it out. You got to do it.
yeah, 100%. I think that's a good point. You cannot throw in the towel. And your simple perspective with the Excel sheet, it kind of hits home though with the point of it. And it's when something's uncomfortable and something needs to be done in your business, because a business is a moving part and it's always going to be continuously evolving. So at each step, you're always going to hit problems. I think it's creative solutions because you have to come up with solutions to a lot of problems, even internal of your business and external. Obviously, the bigger factor when you're customer facing or business facing, there are certain things that you have to kind of change as the years progress to kind of adapt to your environment. So,
Exactly.
uncomfortable tasks is the nature of business. And if you don't like being uncomfortable, I don't know if business is really for you.
Mm.
But where do you see, I mean, this is a good question. I know you have your 5-year goals, but where do you see yourself in 10 years? And where do you see the internet in 10 years? Because you're online, your digital marketing. What do you see on those two perspectives, yourself and your business?
Yeah, as crazy as it sounds, I really believe that, and I'll answer the latter question first. The internet in 10 years is going to be um, basically, I think upwards of like 85%, 90% of actual commerce transactions in terms of online ordering, um, software. I think SaaS companies are making a huge comeback. Obviously, like during the dot-com bubble and the late 90s, early 2000s, SaaS companies were a new thing. They kind of failed off, but now we're seeing tons of these companies that are going public, like Slack or Drift, different companies like that. I see those companies dominating the internet, and basically anything that you need automated, there's going to be some sort of like $15 per month software company that you can get a subscription to and basically automate a ton of things with your business. But I just see basically everybody online. I mean,
Wow.
everybody's going to be online. If you look at I'm 21 and I got my first phone when I was my first phone, not smartphone. My first phone when I was in fifth grade, and the only reason I got one was because I lived about 2 or 3 blocks away from my elementary school, and I was told to call my mom when I got to school because I walked, and then call my mom when I got back home because she was at work, to let her know that I
Miss
got back.
Pagano, so caring.
So that was it. And like now, that was fifth grade. So what was that? 2010. I was 11 years old. Now you see, like, I literally see my cousin's 2-year-old daughter with an iPad type device, like watching, like streaming, like Peppa Pig on YouTube on my cousin's iPhone. Like
It's a good perspective.
there's not going to be, and that's she's going to be in 10 years, to answer your question. She'll be 12. Think about like a 5-year-old also, who's like basically has their own iPhone at this point. They don't know anything else. I mean, people my age, 21, 20, 19, 18, 17, they're addicted to their iPhones, and they didn't even technically grow up with it. I mean, they're growing up with it as we're speaking, but we're looking at a 2-year-old that is on an iPad and an iPhone before they could even learn how to formulate complete sentences and like do like before their motor skills are even developing. How can we possibly believe that like in 20 years, like they're not going to be able to survive without these devices? And so when you think about it like that, and you think about that same type of person that I just painted a picture for you, what's going to be their first instinct when they need to buy something? They're not going to get
They're
in their
gonna go
car and go to
online.
the store. It takes too long. It's in their pocket. It's
That's crazy.
activated by voice in their living room. I think voice is going to make a huge rise. Like that's really it for me. Like that's the deal breaker. There's no doubt in my mind that like in due time, everybody will be making every purchase basically, within reason on the internet. It's just going to flop.
Yeah, And I think coronavirus even sped it up, is what I'm seeing from the news titles, and which is crazy that technology is kind of just dominating. When did we see a time that literally the largest technology companies would be in front of our government, in front of Congress, speaking about being monopolies? But the thing is, literally, they're modern day Rockefellers. Jeff Bezos is a modern day Rockefeller. He's not building a railroad to connect the world. He's building a web page that connects the entire world to every single product. So instead of railroads, he just has a fulfillment center, and and I think it's just crazy where the internet is going, has been going. And I love your perspective, because I think there's still another 3 billion people I've heard that haven't even touched the internet. So all these satellites that are starting to go up, we're going to have billions of more people on the internet. And it's just going to be the central hub for shopping and retail, not e-tail, like not e-commerce retail. Retail is still like 80% of the dollar spent or something. So like the
That's what
money
I was gonna say too, and I just
yeah,
gotta jump in there. Like right now, a
sure.
lot of people don't realize. People think that right now it's 80-20 in favor of e-commerce or like online transactions. It's actually still the opposite. About four out of every $5 spent, um, within reason, like Western countries, like westernized countries or whatnot, is still happening in person at retail stores. I think in 10 years that's going to make a huge flip. I don't know whether it'll be completely flipped to 80-20, but I think that it'll definitely be at least um, over 50% of sales in 10 years are going to be e-commerce.
I'm with you on that, and that's completely true. That's a good stat to know, and I think people need to just realize that it's not all e-commerce just yet, but the trend is coming, and we are trying to get ahead of it as much as we can. But on the opposite side of business, internet, where do you see your life in 10 years? It's a hard question. I don't even know if I have a concrete answer, but I'm always
Right.
curious.
I totally forgot that that was part of the question. I
No,
apologize.
it's fine, man. Your other answer was very good too.
Yeah, I think that what I'll be doing in 10 years is um, living a free life. I mean, the reason that I'm front loading my, I guess, professional career is because I want to be able to work um, limited hours and have freedom in terms of my geographic location. I want to be able to spend time with my family. Um, Hopefully in 10 years, by 30, maybe I'll have a wife, maybe some young children at that point. It's crazy to think about, but I was fortunate enough to have a dad that was in my life like a lot growing up, whether it was little league or just different things like that, drawing, painting with me, stuff like that. And um, he did work a lot, and he had to commute a lot, and there was late nights, and there's some nights that I didn't get to see him and things like that. And like, it's a motivator for me. I want to build this business, and every single, back to what the common theme of saying, like, making sure your actions are in line with your goals. Um, every action that I take is to make sure that this business is growing sustainably to where, um, if we had, say, like, just hypothetically 10,000 clients, it wouldn't give me 140 hours of work a week. It would still be the same amount of work that I'm doing right now, but it would just be as passive as possible. And so, I want to live a very passive work life. And the goal is in 10 years to be almost as passive as possible, like work 2 hours, 3 hours a week, and spend the rest of the time traveling and just being with my family. That's really my goal.
I love that, man. I love that. And I think it's absolutely possible if you build out your system correctly. And it seems like you're taking the steps now to do that. And I honestly can't wait to see you get there. And definitely goals for everyone, but a hard thing to accomplish in terms of making it sustainable when you're not there. I've realized, like, with passive income and things like that, it almost like depreciates passive income. Like, if you have a passive income vehicle, it's always just going to go with nature and just go in the law of entropy, which is just a law of decline in profits, which is interesting. So obviously, with your 2 hours working still, whether it being passive or not, you're going to work on those high level things, which make a higher impact on your business and that bottom line. So totally understand your perspective there. And let's go, man. I can't wait to see you traveling and everything, man. entrepreneurship is a lifestyle thing. It's you become an entrepreneur because you want to create a lifestyle with your business, as well as help the people that whatever you're doing. If you're selling a product, help them in some way, or selling a
Mm,
service, you want to help them in some way, and that shouldn't be limited in capacity to what you have to do and the time you have to put in. It just depends on how you build your business, and you're going to build it in a way where it's more passive.
right.
So very cool, man. Next question, and we've been talking a lot about mindset. You have a very similar perspective to me in some things, but how powerful do you believe your mindset is on your success in business?
I think it's everything. I think as a business owner, you almost have to become one with the business. A lot of these things that I say are very like unconventional, and people are probably thinking I'm a crazy guy, but if you really like listen to what I'm saying, like if you are in a bad mental state, do you think that your business is going to be doing well? No, of
No.
course not. And it's like it sounds pretty obvious, but like a lot of times you can get caught up in little things, especially as a salesperson. One thing I quickly realized, and I'll say one anecdote that I really realized how vital my mindset was, as a salesperson, you get a lot of hard rejects. That's just part of the business. And hard rejects sometimes could be taken a little personally. You get somebody on the phone, for some reason, your value proposition just doesn't sit right with them. And they really, go to town on you and start degrading you. And it's pretty crazy. When you hang up that phone call, 5 minutes later, you've got to get on the phone with a complete stranger from another part of the United States or the world and basically go through the same thing with a big old smile on your face. And for me, that was a very tough hurdle to get through. But then I started realizing, like, if again, it's one of those things like, what's the reason that your business will fail? And it just comes down to myself, like myself and only myself. I wouldn't. I was carrying my negativity from my previous phone call onto the next one, and that was just a domino effect. And so what I realized was like, whether you do good or you do bad, meaning like you get a hard reject or maybe you close the deal, you can't let your emotions sway. Like you need to roll with the punches through thick and thin. Business is an ongoing freaking sine curve. If anybody remembers that from high school, just up and down, up and down, up and down. And the thing is, like, if you get so hung up on give yourself a pat on the back when you do good. That's fine. But at the same time, like if you do bad, you just have to realize, like, if freaking Mike Trout gets however many at bats a season, he's going to strike out dozens of times. He's going to strike out hundreds of times or whatever. I don't know. Or hundreds is a little too much for a season, but he's going to strike out dozens of times. And like the reason is because he's getting so many at bats. So like if he was pissed off about every single strikeout, he'd never hit a home run. And that's the same way you need to look at your life. Like the way that you get into a good mindset is realizing that failure is inevitable. That is it. Like you will fail always. And you just have to look at it with a different perspective. That's it.
Absolutely. And I think that's a big thing because only 1% really do it in some way. And it's 1% because, we're basically trained from a young age to kind of just listen to other people and be passive in ways, but it's entrepreneurship that makes you kind of have to break out of that and break out of the norm and break out of the box thinking because, to really grow a business and be very successful, it is not commonplace thinking. It really does take a creative solution. Yet again, going back to what you said before.
Exactly. And another thing that I'll just jump on and add there too is this is such a dangerous idea for a lot of new business owners or old business owners, because when you're faced with a failure, that is the time that you're going to be most likely to throw in the towel. And so when you look at 99% of failed businesses, it's somebody was dealt with an obstacle that they thought in their mind was too much to handle. But in reality, there's nothing that could possibly go wrong in a business that would be enough to like really throw in the towel. If there's a will, there's a way. And the moment that you tell yourself, like, I can never overcome this hurdle, that's when you're going to be the most vulnerable. And that's when you're actually going to fail in your business. If if every
Super
single
true.
day the only thing that happened was like new clients and more revenue and more profit, and our costs are getting decreased, and our fulfillment team is crushing it every single day without failure, like everybody would have a marketing agency. The thing that's keeping people away is like that fear of failure. And as soon as you say to yourself, like, failure is a real thing and failure is unavoidable. The greatest minds in the world fail. There's so many businesses that household names that fail, but like, you just have to understand, if you're getting so many at bats, you're going to strike out, and you just can't let the
No.
strikeout roll into your next at bat. That's it.
Yeah, I like how you say that with the roll into the next thing, and that's like a sales conversation and many other things in life. You can't let any of the negative things kind of roll into that next moment, that next experience that you have in your life, because it genuinely will affect, that next moment, because you're bringing it in and your energy thereof, and the mirror neuron effect yet again, which I think is such a crazy thing to look into. And if people at home want to look into this, they're still listening, mirror neurons. It's just like when you're on the phone with a terrible person, they kind of mirror that onto you, so then that next phone call kind of becomes terrible. But very awesome, man. Just
Mm-hmm.
keep going at bat. I guess keep going on the phone. That's basically it. Honestly, with anyone, just
That's
keep
it.
going at it. You have to roll with the punches, and that is life. Life is what happens when you're busy making plans. Your plans may not always work out, but life will. So make sure you're doing everything every day that will lead up to that plan in some way.
Exactly.
What's the biggest struggle you face as a business owner currently?
Yeah. So, I mean, there's so many struggles, and I think you have to embrace them all. But for me, I think um, the toughest part about being a business owner, for personally, and this is just my humble opinion, is the fact that you have to wear so many different hats. Matter of fact, you have to wear every hat. And if you are the world rewards people that are really, really, really good at one thing in particular. If you're like really good at, um, you know, finance, you can get a job in finance, and like, you don't have to ever like say the word marketing. You don't have to think about it. You don't have to think about accounting. You don't have to think about operations. You don't have to think about supply chain. Like, you just need to think about your like position or whatever. When you're an entrepreneur, you need to be
Yeah,
able to like to dip your hands in every single freaking thing that exists, whether it's from like
yeah,
the branding of your Instagram page all the way to like the format of your client proposals. And so for me, if I look at my calendar, sometimes at the beginning of the day I could get a little overwhelmed, because I'll look at my calendar and I'll see like, okay, from 10 to 11, I'm going to be prospecting. And then from 11, like as soon as 11 a.m. hits, it's a hard switch. It's like freaking like, like stopping on a dime, like Michael Jordan Euro step, from straight from sales into like email marketing campaign design. And it's very tough sometimes to be able to efficiently like switch that mind, like literally engage a completely different part of your brain to do something. And honestly, that's mentally exhausting, to be able to turn on and turn off these different parts of your brain to be able to like keep doing different things. And so I think as you're scaling a business, like the mindset that I have is just what we talked about freaking 3 years ago or 2 years ago, Dom. Like, I need to focus on what I'm really good at. And when you're really good at something, you're also, it's very important, efficient. And I need to find somebody that is efficient at the things that I am inefficient at. And so that's where like becoming a good, I guess like that's where your HR brain comes into play, where like you got to realize like, damn, like I really suck at accounting. I should really look into getting somebody to do the books. And like, that's like a step that you take as a business owner. So yeah, so
yeah,
that's the toughest part for me, biggest struggle.
yeah. Absolutely, man. That is definitely a struggle as a business owner in the beginning. You never know kind of what you'll have to do for that day. Sometimes things do come up, whether it is the code on your website or something where you need to fix it quickly. Can't really outsource it. You got to kind of roll up your sleeves and figure it out yourself. So It's a good point to bring up for sure. And I'm going to just hop over to another question. You did answer, you have had a failed business before. Not necessarily, and we've even talked about the word failure. It wasn't necessarily a failure, the clothing brand, but you kind of just stepped away from it. And going back, like with failure in business, you're not a failure until honestly they put a padlock on your door. And that's what Tillman Fertitta said. He's like the largest restaurateur in the world. He's like a billionaire. He owns like some team. I wish I remembered the name, but if they put the padlocks on your door, that means your business is completely out and there's nothing you can do. But up until that point, you can work on your business, grind it out, and always be trying to get more customers, you know?
Always.
For sure. So what is your big dream? What's your end goal? And I think we kind of answered that on the business level, the passive side, but other things, like what are your big dreams?
Yeah, my big dreams, I mean, like it's really, I think at its core, it's what everybody else wants, and that's to live a happy, fulfilling life. I I think that one of the most, and this is not me, trying to boast, but I think as a younger guy, as a 21-year-old, I've really been able to understand the value of patience. And so I'm not trying to jump the gun, cheat the system. I'm not trying to do anything out of order. I'm just an honest man. I work hard. Um, and every action that I take is in line with my goals for the most part, the majority, I'll say. And so for me, it's like, I don't get me wrong. I'm a go-getter. I'm a goal setter, but like, I don't really think too much about the macro because it's so hard to get anxious right now, Thursday, August 6th at 9:58 p.m. to get anxious about where I'm going to be in 30 years and like if I'm going to be building a school in Africa or like if I'm going to be a bum that like just does like can't even pay rent. Like and I don't think
I
that
love it, man. No, it's true.
I hope that that doesn't happen, the latter, but like I can't think about, there's a great quote by, I don't know if it's a quote, but I think it's Michael Jordan said in an interview, like, why would I ever worry about a shot that I haven't taken yet? And so it's like, I can't worry about, or not necessarily worry, but I shouldn't really spend any time thinking about like 55-year-old Dean, the philanthropist, when like I've got prospects that could be being cold called right now, And so it's like,
Yeah.
I think living in the present tense is something that is very valuable, being able to live in the present tense.
Yeah. I like how you separate it.
Sorry, go ahead.
No, I'm sorry. I cut you off there, but I like how you separate it between the macro and micro. And I really like your perspective on that. And I think even myself, I get lost in the future sometimes, but the future only will happen in the present moment. So you can't really worry about it because it hasn't happened yet. So it's better to call on the prospect. It's better to work and take the action in your business than to stress about, oh my God, what am I going to be doing in 30 years? Because honestly, that's decades away. But having your year plan, your 2-year plan, your 3-year plan, and maybe, 5-year plan, that kind of just sets you up in some direction. But I genuinely, I like your perspective there because sometimes I get lost in the macro when I should be focusing on the micro. But
It's true, man.
what is hope? It is. It is. I really appreciate that because I'm even learning here. But what is really holding you back from accomplishing your big goals and dreams in the next 6 months to a year? And backing to this was asked, I believe, by Elon Musk to like some people or some tech person asked this question, and it kind of makes you think like, I have these goals for, like you said, the 10 years and that passive thing. What's holding you back from doing it in 6 months?
It's probably just limiting beliefs. There is no reason that you can't achieve what you want to achieve in 10 years and 6 months. It's just a matter of like, I guess, balancing, I guess, focusing on myself too. Like I know that like if I just really want to go like head first and dive in and be like a full workaholic, I can, and like my business will grow faster, but at what cost? Like I'll damage relationships. Like family, friends, my girlfriend, whatever it is, it's just not a good thing to like say everything else is second to like a business. And it's like that there's that one like kind of school of thought, but then there's another part of me that says like, again, it would just be myself, my limiting beliefs. But and I think distractions too, like again, like if you're not like, if you spend an hour like sitting and like daydreaming about 50 years from now or like 40 years from now, you're just wasting an hour where you can literally be like putting another brick in the freaking pavement to build the pathway to success. That was too
No,
freaking cliche or whatever, but
no, but I like it, and it's so true.
mm, that's it.
But even to the beginning part of that, bro, it's like I like your perspective on that, because if you want to accomplish what's going to take 10 years to build in 6 months, you're giving up 90% of all of the other activities that may bring enjoyment into your life and that bring that work-life balance, and is kind of the main reason why you started a business in the first perspective. So I like it, but it's interesting to see where your mind's at, which is awesome, because honestly, I don't know if I would, it would be cool to say, okay, I'll rush growing my vending business to, 1,000+ vending machines in 6 months. But like in reality, it's a limiting belief, sure, and I agree, but I genuinely don't think I would want to do that. I don't think I would want to burn myself out to do it quicker rather than do it over a longer, sustainable period of time. And that goes back to
Sustainability.
that word.
Exactly.
But it does bring us to our last question, which I think I might have just answered it for you. But what do you believe is the most powerful quality of a successful entrepreneur? And
Yeah, I think really when it comes down to it, I wish I could give you a more thoughtful answer than this, man, but I've definitely let out a lot of my value in the past 2 hours. But I think it's discipline, man. And like going back to that, um there's a little anecdote that I have just to throw in here at the end, and it was kind of an epiphany moment for me as well. But when I think about a scenario, the first thing that I do, and this is a great tip and a great tool that I've actually, and I could genuinely say a lot of what I talk about is stuff that I read about or hear about on podcasts. I don't, rip people off, but like it's just ideas that I've kind of culminated and I've like, kind of turned into my own thing. But this is something that I've done and I've never read about it. I've never heard anybody talk about it, but it's been so helpful for me. When I think about something, I think about the two extremes of it, like unrealistic extremes. And then what that helps me do is understand what would happen if I was somewhere in the middle. And what I mean by that is like a very close friend of mine came to me at the beginning of the summer and he said to me, I really want to get a job. I'm tossed up because he had lost his job because of COVID. Very unfortunate. And he said, I really want to get a job. And there's like 3 industries that I'm kind of tossed up between. I was like, okay, great. Like I could help you out with that. Like he's a good friend of mine. He came into my office. We sat down. First thing we did was like, the typical, like cleaned up his LinkedIn page, cleaned up his resume, blah, 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 created some email copies. Right. And then I said, every single day, today's like, whatever it is. Let's just say it's like June 3rd, right? The beginning of the summer. I said every single day from June 3rd to September 3rd, email 10 new people just by Google searching like one of the industries was interior designers. So like interior designers on Long Island, interior designers in New York, whatever. Every single day, find contact info of 10 of these people and send 10 cold emails every single day for the summer. We did the math and it's like whatever, however many days that is, like 900 emails or something over 90 days, I think, or 600 emails over 60 days. I don't remember what we said, but I said to myself, like, and this is where the epiphany happened for me. If you sent out 900 emails over the entire summer, by the time the fall comes around, is it even possible for you to not have a job? And we both said, like, first off, let's take a step back. If you send 900 emails over an entire summer, what are the chances that nobody, 0%, 0 out of 900 answer your email or even acknowledge your existence? There is no chance to anybody listening. Like, if you send 900 to 1,000 emails, there's no chance that nobody's going to answer you, right? So with that given, let's say like 10%, you get 90 emails back, maybe like half of those say like, sorry, we're not looking to hire anybody. Maybe 45 companies that happen to be looking for like whatever you do, like photography or like graphic design, they happen to be looking for that. And they're like, yeah, we'd love to interview you. You interview at 30 of those companies. It's just a game of numbers. And so like when you think about it like that, like that's an extreme example. If you send out 1,000 cold emails, the chances of nothing happening is 0%. And so when you think about it like that, like if you're trying to grow a podcast, DM 100 or DM 10 influencers a day. By the end of the summer, you'll for sure have at least like 2 or 3 people with massive followings and like pretty loyal fan bases that are on your podcast, you know, like
Absolutely.
That's it. And so, so I don't know where I was going with that, but I think
it's in the action. It's in the doing. You had the epiphany. You had the epiphany that you just got to kind of do and put yourself out there. It doesn't matter the situation. The best quality of being an entrepreneur is just getting up every day and doing something repeatedly that maybe has there's lead and lagging indicators in business. And I think cold emails and cold calling is a lagging indicator because you could do so many, but it's over the weeks and months of building and nurturing that relationship do you actually see a sale. So
exactly. And
honestly,
and that kind of leads me to like
cool.
one of my favorite quotes of all time is by Ralph Waldo Emerson. And he basically just says it's super simple and it's kind of like, I guess it's not the correct English vocabulary way that we'd say it in 2020, but he basically says, do the thing and you will have the power. And I literally wrote that like that is written on so many different books that I have, like journals and notebooks and sales books and stuff like that. But that quote is so good because like there's so many quotes that are about like you should do things this way, do things this way, do things this way. But there's never quotes about like you should do things, period. Like that's it. Like do it. Like you want to hear the answer. You want to hear how people become billionaires and millionaires. They did something. They did a lot of things, a lot of times, every single day. And so many of those failed. Like thousands of them failed. Like my most successful students, when I was an e-commerce consultant, they would make $1 million on their 153rd product that they tested. If they gave up after 152, they would have $0. That's the thing. Like, just, if you try one more time, you'll never fail.
2 gem quotes to really wrap up this podcast. Longest podcast we've had, 2 hours. But perfect. I genuinely, I love it. I genuinely appreciate your time, and I love that quote. Do the thing, and you will have the power.
That's the answer. That's the answer.
That is the answer to everything right there, because as long as you do something, you again have the power. But I think a lot of people are living life unconsciously and they're not doing the thing. So if you're listening, go out, go do something, get conscious with your life, and create your life for what you want it to be. You don't have to be at the mercy of other people and everything around you.
And I'm not even going to open up another tangent, but let me just say, like, the follow-up to do the thing and you'll have the power is like, do the thing and you'll have the power, but like get so comfortable with failure. If you're listening to this, like Dominick and I have failed. Like I know because you're a successful guy that you failed. I know that. And like, there's no such person in the world that becomes successful without going through failure. It just doesn't exist. And so like the main reason that if you're listening to this, that you haven't had that major breakthrough is because you haven't had enough failures.
Absolutely, man.
That's really it.
And if you haven't had enough failures, then it leads up to continue to shake out the kinks and figure out what you're good at. And eventually you're going to succeed when you figure out what you align with and what you're good at. So
that's it.
Dean, thank you for coming on, guys. You can find him on Instagram, Dean T. Pagano, I believe, DeanTV as well on Instagram. And you can check him out on YouTube, DeanTV. Check out my podcast with him and his other ones. And truly, Jen, and basically you can wrap it up with your outro. And yeah, thank you for coming on, man. I really do appreciate it. And I know it's getting late.
Oh, no worries, Dom. Yeah, it was a pleasure, man. It was great. We could have definitely been on here for another 2 hours, honestly. But yeah, like Dom said, like follow, like go ahead and I'm not trying to like plug like oh follow me on Instagram, but like follow me on Instagram and shoot me a DM and just let me know you listened to this podcast. Let me know you made it to this point. You vibed with what we were saying and you got some sort of value out and like I'd be happy to honestly like I don't charge for consulting or anything. I just love to help people out that share the same passion for growing businesses as I do. Let me know if you're looking to start a business. Let me know if you've had a business for 30 years, whatever it is, anything in between. Like, let's talk about it. I can share some insight as to what you could do on the marketing front and hopefully help. But at Dean T Pagano.
Awesome, man. Thank you so much. And yeah, I'll talk to you soon, bro.
Cool, man. Thank you.